policy at Cabinet Office, but I'm also the Deputy Minister responsible for the Anti-Racism Directorate, which is, as you know, situated within Cabinet Office. So work closely with the Minister, with the Quatu, and also with the Cabinet Secretary. So as the Minister just said, we have been working to bring forward an anti-racism policy for the OPS. Related to that, though, and you've heard Steve Orsini, the Secretary, talk at town halls, and I don't need to say to you his commitment to ensuring that we've got a fair, safe, equitable workplace in the OPS, and he's working very, very hard to help us achieve that. And a couple of specific things that you may not know about, I wanted to just ensure that you do. So one, with respect to people and the personal, we have heard of situations where people are involved in a WDHP process and they may be without benefits. And so he has made it very, very clear, both verbally and in writing to deputy ministers before the holidays, that he's expecting every deputy to be personally responsible for knowing what is happening within their ministry with respect to the WDHP complaint processes that may be underway, but also that no decision be made with respect to taking away an individual's benefits without, number one, the deputy being personally involved, and number two, the Public Service Commission, which, as you know, is that central decision-making body within government, the PSC also being very closely involved. So, so that is number one. That direction has gone out to the system. With respect to the system and the WDHP process itself, I think we're all very concerned about what we have heard about people's experience with that process. There was a review of the process done in 2016, and that led to the development of the Respectful Workplaces policy. But that's not enough, and so Steve has directed the Anti-Racism Directorate to lead the independent review with an independent reviewer of the WDHP process with an anti-racism lens. So looking specifically at, so what has been the experience of people who have gone through the system, what is the level of knowledge of investigators internally and externally that the government uses to conduct those, and bring forward recommendations for how the system could be improved from an anti-racism perspective. In addition to that, no, I should say, and within that, also looking at, nobody wants to get into a WDHP formal complaint process if they don't need to. And so what more can we do to have less formal, safe, protected from any kind of potential risk to the individual involved, ways for people to bring forward their concerns before something needs, and hopefully avoiding the need for something to go into a formal WDHP process. So that's all within the scope of this work. And then finally, he's also asked the ARD to work with a third party to do a review of some complex WDHP specific cases, and what can we learn from that can both, you know, help inform how we approach WDHP complaint processes in the first place, but also let's make sure that what's going on right now, if there's anything that is problematic from an anti-racism perspective, that we've got an opportunity to identify and address that right now. So he's working very, very closely with us, with the directorate, to get that work underway.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. So we have a formal presentation to make to Mr. Couteau. While we sort of coordinate logistics, I'm going to just sort of dive in to talk about why we're here, and then we have the speakers list. There's so many African Canadian women who come from a far way to be here, so I'm going to try my best to have as many of you get your moment to say what you need to say, and we're going to have a speakers list to do that. But first, I just want to sum up why we've mobilized this particular meeting and what the problem is here. there's been a number of African Canadian women who have brought forward serious allegations against the provincial government. As you know, the OPS has a legal obligation to protect all of its workers from anti-Black racism. Mr. Couto, speaking.
I'm listening.
Okay. Your government has an obligation to protect workers from anti-Black racism. A lot of women have come forward and have commenced lawsuits against the Ontario Public Service on the basis of racial discrimination, gender-based discrimination, ability-based discrimination, and the kind of language that's been used to describe the epidemic that is anti-Black racism within the OPS. I've heard words like cancerous, pervasive, entrenched, systemic. There's so many stories, and we're talking about ways that we can document those stories in different platforms so that we realize how deeply entrenched this problem is. You should not have this amount of litigation with Black women, and the government should not be spending, goodness knows, thousands and tens of thousands of dollars on defending its racism. So there's a number of demands that have come forward. We did have the opportunity to meet with the Assistant Deputy Minister not too long ago, so I'm going to rehash some of the core demands that are being asked for at this juncture. So the first demand is the immediate moratorium on the suspension and firing of Black workers. There's been a number of suspensions. I know there's a lot of women, one in particular that comes to mind, that was cut off payroll for over 9 months, and it was only through mobilization and action and occupying the minister's office, the Minister of Citizenship and Immigration, Laura Albanese in York South-Weston, that we found that her pay was reinstated. But it should not take 9 months of people organizing and having a woman's home and her actual equity put at risk in order to have her pay. It is outrageous that any woman should be put in that position, and it happens to African Canadian women. The other demand that we're asking for is a truth and reconciliation initiative vis-a-vis the experiences of African Canadian women within the OPS. So many of these stories are tragic, and there's a lot of pain in those stories, and it's wanting of formal documentation and to hear those stories come out. We're calling for tighter legislation and protection for workers who experience racism as well. And the third demand is we're calling for an independent and impartial investigation into the OPS to audit anti-Black racism. So those are 3 of the main demands that we've been calling for at the last ADM meeting we had with Akwatu. And we're not, honestly, people are not going anywhere. I mean, it's only, the mobilizing is only getting stronger. We have, like, I don't know how many people here today, and for every person that's here today, there's 5 others who would have wanted to be here. So this issue is not going away. What I'm going to do at this juncture is I'm going to pass the floor to some people on our speakers list so that we can hear from as many women as possible. So first on the list is Jean Marie Dixon, so I'll allow you to introduce yourself.
Hello everyone, my name is Jean Marie Dixon. I'm counsel with the Ministry of the Attorney General. My last office that I was working in is the Civil Remedies for Illicit Activities Office. I can say that since I started with the government in 2002, I have experienced anti-Black racism. I first started as an Articling student at the Family Responsibility Office, and a litigation coordinator who is working with me, this was a white woman whose responsibility is just to put paperwork into a file. She went around telling stories and lies about me, just outrageous things that were damaging to my personal well-being and to my professional well-being. When I went to my legal director about it, she said, "Why do you care? We know it's not true. Why do you care?" This continued, and it really had a detrimental effect on my health, on my well-being, and on my professional persona. I then went to my association, which is similar to a union. It's ALOC, Association of Law Officers of the Crown, and they said they would look through informal channels, and what you have to know is ALOC is an association. It's one person, a president, and that person goes back to work under management. They might have a 2-year or so term, and lawyers are very much interested in going into management, getting excellent files, and maybe becoming a judge one day. So when I went to meet back with this woman, and I'm going to say her name so everyone knows it, Deanna Exner, she told me she was threatened by management not to assist me. I could tell that she was visibly upset, and she said that if I were to say anything, she would deny the conversation. After that, the legal director that I had, Barbara Nawrocki, left. We got a new one, Donna Holmes, and I went to her with the issue that was happening. She was hostile, she was angry, she was undermining. She showed support for Carol Hagan, who was my litigation coordinator. And what ultimately ended up happening is I was placed on a forced suspension. That took place during the course of 2 years. And one of the things I should say, the day I was put on that forced suspension, I'd met with my legal director, Donna Holmes. After that, I had gone into a senior counsel's office, which was about 2 or 3 doors down. We were in his room with the door closed, speaking quietly, a white male. And later on, about 30 to 40 minutes later, Donna Holmes banged on the door, swung it open, and said that in front of everybody, the cubicles that are there, I'm causing a disturbance, and I was escorted to leave. And after that, I was placed in 2 other offices where I continued to face anti-Black racism and targeting. And once you talk out about racism within the OPS, you are going to be targeted. And I have to say that the government is happy, and white people are happy if you're in certain positions. If you're the cleaner and stuff like that, that is fine. But you better not occupy a space that's considered to be reserved for white bodies, because if you do, that's problematic.
Amen.
So after that, I was placed at the Civil Remedies for Illicit Activities office. There was a gentleman who was South Asian who was there before I arrived, and there was a Black woman who was there, and she arrived, and they crossed over for about 2 weeks, and he told her about the level of racism that was in that office, and that he actually had a physical altercation with one of the white male lawyers. He went on and moved on. We were there were 3 of us, 2 Black women and 1 East Asian woman. We all experienced racism, outrageous things. And they left, the 2 of them, because it was such a hostile and toxic environment. What was noticed is that I experienced it worse, of course, because I had already spoken out about the racism I had experienced in the Family Responsibility Office. Long and short of it, I went through this for many years. I started at CREA, the short firm for the Civil Remedies Office. And in 2016, I was informed by a Black counsel who joined that office that people had organized and orchestrated acts of anti-Black racism against me, had encouraged him to participate in this, and that he had gone to management on several occasions, my legal directors, and they did nothing. I then went to my legal directors because I knew I was experiencing racism, but I just thought this is the racism that you always experience. I had no idea that my colleagues, and I'm talking lawyers here, who have a responsibility to uphold the law, who have a professional responsibility, a moral responsibility, an ethical responsibility, and a legal responsibility. And again, my legal director and my deputy director did nothing, okay? Then I'm in a boardroom, much like the boardroom we're in today. I'm set up there to work on some files with 2 other lawyers, and a white woman who had just joined her office is a call that's after me, and seniority really matters when you're a lawyer, and she's there on a secondment, actually approaches me and is hostile that I'm in this boardroom. She approached me on 3 different occasions. I brought it up to management and stuff, and I end up being suspended out of the blue on May 16th, 2016.
Shame.
And I'm still out of the workplace. And I was suspended on the basis that when I said you're treating me this way because I'm a Black woman and this is an instance of white privilege, I was told that that was reverse racism.
What?
That I was looking at her as a white person with a racial lens, and that is wrong. I was also told that I was overheard speaking on the phone saying white privilege. So we have people who work in the Treasury Board Secretariat, lawyers. We have people who work in what's called the WDHP section, and none of these people have training. They don't even understand what the word racism means, and that is problematic. And I want to say, since the Anti-Racism Directorate came into being and the Anti-Racism Action Plan. That was in 2016. Nothing has been done. Since I was suspended, I've learned of other black women who have been suspended. I want you to know, Minister Coteau, that racism is a public health emergency. I want you to know that it has severely affected my life, the lives of my colleagues, the lives of my friends, and the lives of my family. I want you to know that lawyers have been fearful to speak out about the situation. And I also find it very interesting that there's now Meg's new anti-racism strategic plan, and it's headed by one Indigenous woman, which that is great because we have histories that are quite similar, but the other person is a white woman. How is it possible that we have white people heading up issues to do? Yes, this is what I'm talking about. This is problematic. It's problematic that I've been out of the office for 2 years. Taxpayers are paying for that, and I am suffering physically and mentally because of this racism. And you're well aware of it. We've spoken about it and stuff like that, and nothing has been done. There's no excuse for this, and so I want to give the floor to someone else to say, but I'm one of the few lawyers who are willing to speak out publicly about something that is a disease, a cancer, and it's killing us.
Jean Marie, could you ask how many people in the room are suspended? Probably ask
So
everybody.
maybe by a show of hands, how many people in this room who work for the OPS were suspended or fired or terminated or suspended without pay?
How many have been
Suspended,
disciplined or anything? We know what's happening.
suspended, now without pay, demoted.
Okay, so there's a number of
Everything
people.
that goes with anti-black racism you could find. I am the poster child here.
Ok, alors je vais faire la prochaine présentation. Ça va être Henrose Nelson. I'd like to present Henrose Nelson, who has mobilized and worked incredibly hard again to have this platform for all of you. So at this juncture, Henrose, you can make your presentation.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Rose.
Minister Coteau and all the executives that are here. Thank you for hosting this meeting and extending an invitation for us to have this opportunity. I thought it was very important a little while ago not to accept the hush money that I was being offered by the government to keep silent about my story. Today, I'm here to let you know that for the past 6 years, I've had many experiences with anti-black racism, and it came to a culmination 6 years ago when my son was born out of a situation of oppressive workplace action. He was born 750 grams or 1 pound 6 ounces. Every day that I look at him, I am angered by the actions that I've had to experience at the workplace because of a white manager, a bad white manager who believes it is okay to oppress black workers. When I decided to take action against the employer, I filed my human rights application, and 3 years after I returned to the workplace, I was demoted. I was instructed to go to the basement to collect files, to do all manner of really nasty, deplorable things. And I've just had to try to put the pieces. Every day that I wake up, I have to put the pieces back together again. Every morning, I've had to try to put the pieces together because it strips away at your mental health. I had to walk out of the workplace when the scrutiny, the retaliation because I entered into a WHP process, which was really a really bad process. Out of that process, it was determined that I was reprised because I filed a human rights application. From that experience, when I left the office in 2016, I made an attempt, after counseling and support through the help of my health professionals, to return to the workplace. My employer told me to stand down. I've been standing down for the past year. Fortunately, I was paid for 11 months, and then I was forced to go on a sick leave. Some of my colleagues have not been fortunate, as I have been, despite the deplorable conditions that I've had to face up. A lot of them have had to mortgage their homes. Minister, what I'm asking you today if the employer, if bad managers in the Ontario Public Service has violated me, why should I, a worker, why should I be forced into a position to fight the employer to mortgage my home? I have 3 children. One who worked as a page at Queen's Park, she's 16, she's going to grade 11. I have a grade 8 student, and my son who is 6. Why should I, and my parents who just immigrated to Canada, so that means that I have 7 people in my home. Why should I contemplate providing for the needs of my family versus fighting the employer? What I would like is tighter legislation to protect the rights of workers, as Saran said. And we need a grant, we need funding. If we're gonna fight back in the first place, we should not be fighting.
Yeah.
Because a stand needs to be taken to deal with bad managers.
Right.
We're asking you, I am asking you, my case is coming up in July. I do not have any money. I do not have any money because I'm sacrificing the needs of my family versus fighting the government. Will you help me?
So, Minister Couteau, I would like you to not answer just yet. We have a speakers list and we are on a very tight schedule. So I'm gonna go down the list. If you can keep your comments fairly brief, vous pouvez faire vos commentaires en deux langues officielles. Puis, I'm gonna prioritize women, first. So, I have first on my list Robin Hope.
Okay, that's me. I wasn't gonna speak today. I just came to observe and be a part of the conversation.
Do you want to come sit?
I'm sorry if you guys, I'm supposed to.
No,
But I'm just gonna be brave and talk about my experience very briefly. The last year has been very difficult for me. I've been in the OPS for 14 years now. I've worked with a lot of people in the room, and I'm a senior specialist in my field. I'm a very confident communications consultant, and I know who I am. I know what I've done to get here. I know the career path and the education that has brought me to the OPS. I chose the OPS. I was in the private sector for 3 years. I chose the OPS to continue my career into my when I get older. And 4 years ago, I was put under a director who has now taken me from a senior, thriving, confident person on a leadership path to doing admin work. Now, it wasn't obvious to me. It was systematic. It was over time. The first little bit I said, oh, well, I just have to apply for this job, seeing people get jobs in and out, and all done under the radar and by the book. So I guess my point is, I took a stress leave this year for the first time in my 14 years. I've never been off more than a couple of days with a cold. I'm a very strong-minded person, but it really, really played on me. It played on my confidence, and only with colleagues and people in this room was I reminded that one person should not be able to define you.
Yes.
That is the definition to me of anti-Black racism in the OPS. And so I'm at the beginning stage, unfortunately, but I haven't reached the stage that these ladies have, and but one conversation, one disciplinary action, and I could be right in your shoes because of one person. And I think that is the key for me. There has to be a route for us to speak out.
Exactly.
To identify when this is happening.
Exactly.
To not have to go to the person when something doesn't feel right, when you don't get that position, and somebody who was an intern 6 months prior gets it.
Yes.
And for me, that is what I'm fighting back from now. I'm back from my leave. I'm getting there. I'm in an admin role. She's taken my entire position and put it into an entry-level role.
Yeah.
That is demeaning. That is demoralizing.
Humiliation.
It's humiliating.
Everything.
I was a senior communications consultant on a leadership path to become a team lead to a manager.
Shame.
And now I
You're not the only
am
one,
not
though.
by any means of I can't do the role.
Right.
I literally, on my sick leave, I was taken out of that position and moved into a correspondence unit, which is all inputting data. I don't do any strategic planning, I don't do any writing, I don't do any advising, ministry, I worked with ministers, that was my role. All that to say, I won't take up too much more time, but this is the face, and there are a lot of people like me that can't quite pinpoint what it is that is wrong and what is happening, but over time they see. I'm one of 3 black women in my ministry, in my branch.
What branch is that, sister?
It's MGCS Communications, and I gotta be brave there, right?
Absolutely. Name them every time.
And I've seen 3 black people in my branch, and I've seen things happen to each of them. I'll only speak to my experience, but this is the face, this is the reality. And it's only through my faith and my confidence and knowing what I can bring to a table and knowing that there's 27 other ministries that I need to just be brave and get out there and try and continue my career the way I left it.
You are worthy.
You're worthy,
These
sister.
are the things that I just wanted to bring up and say.
So, thank you for that. Again, we're on a tight schedule. I have the next person on my list. Before I do that, il y a un formulaire qui est ici. Vous pouvez remplir votre formulaire. This is a form you can fill out that will collect some data because not everyone will have, we won't get to everybody, but please do fill that out so we can collect the data and present it to Minister Couto. Alors maintenant, je vais présenter Joy Forrester.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'm Joy Forrester. I've been in the OPS for over 23 years. I've worked in 5 different ministries. My last ministry was the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care. And I'm very disappointed in the OPS in the sense that I came here from my country, Jamaica, on a scholarship. I have a 3-year teacher's degree with the University of the West Indies. I came here on a scholarship, 4-year scholarship. And I at Trent University got my BA honors in communication, went on to do my master's degree in communication studies. So I've always worked, I was fortunate enough to be employed in the OPS in communication in my field, and I celebrate that opportunity. It was really good. And I've worked really hard in communications. I've led some of the very biggest strategic comms project. For example, in the Women's Directorate, I led the Ontario-wide provincial wife assault and sexual assault education campaigns. And at the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care, I was there in communication for 16 years. 16 now, but 15 years prior, I have a change of senior management team. My new director and manager, I've always gotten very good performance reviews. In latter half of September 2015, when after I've had my mid-year performance review, which was very good and has always been good, my manager called me in for my final review and said to me that I am incompetent and I have to be let go if I do not pull my socks up. And I'm saying to her, where is this coming from? I've always gotten perfect reviews, and my clients have never complained. Have she had any complaints from my clients? She said no, but just I was incompetent, and if I don't step up, I would have to go. I brought this immediately to my union reps, and they proceeded to communicate with me and my manager to deal with this issue. And so we put a process in place wherein I could report to my manager the work I was doing, seeing that she said I was not competent. Steps that I would take to make sure that I'm up and doing my work. Within 4 months, I was called in after my vacation, after this started, and I went on vacation in August, September 17, 2015. My manager called me in and she said, I need to meet with you and your union rep. I called the union, they said, you didn't have a representative to come, so I thought, okay, I'm gonna go, this can't be anything serious. I went and I was given a form, I was walked across to this building, and I was given a form to sign to say I have no union representative. And at that point in time was asked to turn over my badge because I was immediately terminated. And I was not allowed to go back to my desk or to collect anything because I
When was
have
this?
not. It was September 17, 2015. You cannot imagine how I felt. I had just come back from a meeting with my own ADM where I was the senior lead comms advisor for employee engagement. And I was working side by my ADM for those processes. My ADM has never had any concern. As a matter of fact, when we had weekly meetings, if I wasn't at work, we didn't have a meeting because you would either have a line of support. However, I was walked across the building to Naranja Bay, where my manager proceeded to go upstairs to my office, grab my stuff, meet me in the lobby, and said, "Out you go." So for 1 year, 2015 to 2016, I am the union rep, was fighting this case. I was called in for a meeting about in January 2016, where I was offered a payout. I said, I'm not accepting that. I want my job back. And so the union proceeded to go through arbitration. And the first meeting arbitration was at the end of July 2016. And at that point in time, the employer said they would reinstate me back in my job and repay me back for all the back funding I didn't pay, because I wasn't being paid for
When did
entire
this
year.
happen?
2015.
No,
September
September
17, 2015.
15, okay.
So from September 2015, I was off work until July 2016.
Okay, the reinstatement was in
Yeah.
in 16, okay.
When it was in 20, so I didn't have any money. I was on unemployment. I'm a single mom with a mental health challenged child, and my employers know that. They know I have a mortgage. They know I have a child with mental health challenges. It didn't stop them from firing me. Right?
And was the supervisor disciplined after? Was it a wrongful dismissal?
It
Is that
was
what they
wrongful dismissal, and this is what this is really trying, because even though I've been reinstated, I was being paid until December 2017.
Right.
Right? Now I'm at home, being paid, when I could be at work, contributing to the OPS.
Right.
And I was signed an MOU with a gag order, not to go to WHP, not to talk to anyone about what has happened to me.
Wow.
Right.
Right? So right now I should not be speaking because there's a gag order on me not to speak. And now my last pay was January 11, 2018. So now I won't have a paycheck. I will have a paycheck in 2 weeks. I have a mortgage
Why did
to
it
pay,
stop again?
because now I'm technically on surplus.
Right.
Because the order of the MOU was that I got repaid back until January 2018.
Right.
Okay,
December 2018.
so what I'm gonna do is just repeat some of the demands that have come out as well. One of the calls that have emerged is to make public the status of the Anti-Racism Directorate Progress Card and mandatory cultural competence and anti-Black racism training for managers. I also want to tell folks in the room, your labor unions, y'all need to mobilize your labor. Your unions have an obligation to protect you from anti-Black racism, an illegal obligation. Just before, we do have a list to go to, and they have a legal obligation to protect you from anti-Black racism. How many of you are unionized? Everyone is unionized.
Yeah.
So your unions need to get it together, and you need to lobby that. So that's something else another takeaway from this meeting. If you don't take away anything else, Minister Couteau, there's certain things that we're making demands on this office, but your labor unions are extremely well resourced. They have all the resources in the world to protect you. So make sure that that's part of the planning. So the next step, but we have actually, we're short on time, so I'm gonna go right to the next.
Can I intervene for a second? We've got 14 minutes left. I really, I did say now, because I have to pick up my daughter. That's what we agreed to now. I wish I could stay for 2 hours to listen, because this is, really important stuff. But I've heard these stories. I believe many of the stories that I've heard. And I know that some of these people, who I've talked to, who I've worked with outside of, before when I was non-government, that I've worked with, who've gone through this. So I know the stories are real. What we need to do is we need to figure out, and I think this is where I can come in, and bring value to it, is to make sure that the accountability process is there. That's what I'm here to do.
So can you implement a moratorium on the suspension and firing of Black workers?
So I don't think you can just put a blanket statement out there that no one can be fired. What if someone comes?
Moratorium.
But even a moratorium, I don't want to, I'm not a lawyer, but I mean legally, if someone goes, you can, I think the solution that the deputy minister presented at the beginning, that if anyone is disciplined or is it terminated? Disciplined in any way, right?
Well, if anybody is, if there's a situation, you know, like the ones you've told us about, where an individual might be suspended without paying benefits, the deputy needs to know, and it needs to come into the Public Service
And that
Commission.
goes to the Secretary of Cabinet, like it's elevated to the top level. But to say no one could be fired is very difficult, because like, what if, you know, someone goes and just hits someone? I don't know, like I'm just
People
hypothetically.
hit us all the time, Minister. They hit us all the time.
You know what, I'm not debating.
And when we retaliate, we are the angry black
Angry
women.
black women.
Yes,
I think
they
the
do it all the
managers
time.
I understand, but think about a moratorium that no one can be fired.
Minister Control, I think the issue that is being raised at
the
this table, and
managers.
specifically by Saran, is looking at interim measures to address what's functionally happening right now in the interim of the Anti-Racism Directorate having all its policies figured out to act on these issues. So when Saran asked the question about having a moratorium, it is today the interim procedure that will take place in order to protect these individuals who have spent their time to come here to meet with you so that you can act on things immediately. That's what the moratorium is about. Yes, we're not saying lifelong absolution from every black person. We're saying right now, today, we're looking at actions and solutions that you can effectively put into place in order to address these needs, to show that you're actually engaged in the public's interest, protecting their interests, and protecting black people from racism. That is what the Anti-Racism Directorate is about, and that is what our expectation is. That's the least that can be done by this government, because you have the power to do it, because we elect you as the electorate and give you that power to do it.
Before you respond, Jean Marie, and then I have Avril Lewis on my list.
I just wanted to indicate that we have spoken to Steve Orsini. Steve Orsini is the head of the OPS, and he absolutely has the power. You're saying that there can't be a moratorium on the suspension and firing of black women, an interim one, yet there is for white people. There's this moratorium. You know what the government does? It uses all of its resources to protect managers, deputy directors, legal directors, our colleagues and stuff. So when we make complaints about anti-black racism in the workplace, it's us that ends up being suspended. How is it that I'm suspended and nobody else is suspended? And in all these cases, that is the story. You already have a moratorium in place. We wanted to apply to black people as well. Start using the money that the government has to support us as well, because the money that you have is being used to support white people to break the human rights code, and that is wrong. To break the workplace policy, that is wrong. To break the
Legal fees.
Legal fees. You have your Treasury Board Secretariat. You have those lawyers who have absolutely no skills or knowledge. Lawyers who can look at something and think there's something such as reverse racism, white privilege. That's ridiculous. If we have untrained lawyers, there's a problem.
We're not going to get anywhere if you don't. I want to put forward some solutions on the table.
Those are solutions.
Okay, well, take that to Steve Orsini.
Minister,
Okay.
you have to understand how we feel.
I'll take it to the
Premier. We'll ask for a moratorium. But here's
we already have one in place for white people.
Okay, let me just address what Stephen said about the elevation to the Secretary of Cabinet. That means that if anyone is going through a process where there's a complaint, where they feel there's an injustice, it's elevated to the Secretary of Cabinet, the highest bureaucrat in government. That means that the responsibility goes to the Secretary of Cabinet. That means that a decision is not going to be made by a supervisor, it's not going to be made by a director, it's not going to be made by an assistant deputy director or a deputy minister. It's going to be done with the deputy minister and Steve Orsini. That is the ultimate accountability in the system. He reports directly to us, to Cabinet.
But it's failing, because those folks are
the system, that is not in place right now. What I'm saying is...
And that's why they're asking for a moratorium in the interim of that being in
I met with
place.
Steve Orsini.
What I'm saying is that Steve Orsini has presented that as a solution, and that he would like to implement that. That is what we want to put in place. That is
In the interim of the implementation, that is what is being asked for
But I can
today.
speak to the timing of that. So that is in place effective before the holidays.
Which holidays?
I'm still on.
Which holidays?
Let me finish.
So each deputy is responsible now for for knowing what cases are active in their ministry and taking appropriate action. with respect
My
to-
deputy should have known that, you know,
So-
that I'm not getting paid. I'm not getting paid. My deputy should have known that on the 4th of January 2017, I attempted to commit suicide. All right? Okay, I attempted to commit suicide. My deputy should know that the employer placed me on sick leave with no medical note for 6 months, and now is forcing me to go on LTIP, and LTIP is asking me for proof of my disability. And my deputy should know that from May last year, I have not received a salary, and today I applied for welfare.
Oh my God.
That's good,
That's
Minister.
shameful.
My deputy should know that the ADM walked up to me and told me you look like you look like you're in a lineup in a club waiting for a next dance. All right, my ADM should know that that somebody came up. A black woman went to somebody in my office and she came and assaulted me, and I was suspended. All right, and that person had not been. That person who assaulted me have never been disciplined.
Yeah, that's the imbalance.
They don't
That's the imbalance.
All right?
That's
My
the
deputy
imbalance.
should know. Let me tell you what my deputy should know. That's what my deputy should know.
So when,
My deputy should know that Peter Solomon, Sarah Anselndo, all right? Peter Solomon walked up to a boardroom, was sitting next to a black person in a boardroom, and a white person told two black men, I don't want you sitting together because I cannot tell you apart. When Peter Solomon filed the WDHP, he was ostracized for 2 years.
right?
That's what my deputy should know.
What
Okay,
should be
we,
done?
okay,
I'm
let
done.
me,
What
let
should be
me,
done?
let me.
So I'm not getting paid. So I want,
So
I
you
have
have to understand, it's very difficult for me to deal with personnel, like personal matters
That's
that
why
are
we're here,
individually.
Minister.
I can help us. I
I'm
can help
sorry,
as a
sir.
collective, but it's very difficult for me to, like, I cannot work on every single, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a personal lawyer, I can't work on every single case, but what I can do is work with everyone in the room to hold the system accountable. That's my job.
And that is why there
And
needs to
that's-
be a moratorium, right? So that it can be systemic.
So when I say that the Secretary of Cabinet has proposed a process that if there's a complaint against a supervisor or anyone in the workforce, that it's elevated to his level to be worked on, that is, to me, that is a shift that's taken place. This is not your director having control of the environment. This goes right to the top. I think it's a good thing.
But there is no mechanism and there is a direct imbalance there, Minister, respectfully. The bad managers, they remain in their job.
They get promoted. They get promoted.
So the second thing, so we know, like there's no question, I work for the federal government. I've seen this personally, like where I've been asked to take tests that people haven't been asked to take tests before. I've seen this stuff. I've been in the public school board.
Have you been ever asked to pick up shoes?
Of course, I've been asked to clean toilets.
Have your director asked
I've
you
been
to
asked
pick
to
up her
clean
shoes?
toilets.
Has she asked you to bring her handbag?
That's not the point. My point is that every system, this is a massive system, right? This is a massive system, 70,000 employees. The Toronto District School Board, 35,000 employees. There is going to be people in the system that are going to make bad
Weed them
decisions.
out, Minister.
We need to weed them out.
Weed
And
them out.
the only mechanism I have is to ensure accountability.
Yep.
So what I'm saying is, like we have said, that the review process that they have in place when a complaint comes in, we're prepared to bring out an outside person to review that through an anti-racism lens, number one. Number two, the Secretary of Cabinet has committed to an anti-racism policy for the OPS. Number three, we've put in place, if there's a complaint about an individual in the OPS that is affecting someone from the African Canadian community, it's elevated to the Secretary of Cabinet's level. This is accountability to me.
Minister, how am I
May I
gonna
just
pay my legal
respectfully
fees?
say that
But this is a hard thing for me.
Why
This
is the
is
Secretary of
this is
Cabinet
very
here?
difficult. I do not have the legal authority to walk in and deal with personal matters and say,
We're all here.
We're here, it's a systemic issue.
right, so,
Steve Orsini knows about our cases.
All of us.
All of our cases.
He knows about
I've been
it.
off for almost 2
So
years.
he's-
What has he done?
he's
Matter of
also
fact, when he was
offered-
directly asked, would he suspend, would he discipline, would he fire managers who have been found to breach the human rights code? He refused to answer that. And then later on, he sent me an email in which he lied about the very question he was asked.
so the
Why
other
am I out of
thing,
the workplace? Why are these women
the other
suffering?
thing that, the Secretary of Cabinet has agreed to is to do an independent review of all the cases.
Oh, when?
When? What are we supposed to
When?
do?
So he's asked the Anti-Racism Directorate to hire an external lead
So while we're still
to
displaced.
review cases. So not all the cases, but the external advisor would come up with criteria to look at complex cases, and so that work will begin
Excuse me,
immediately.
and is it gonna be a white person like we hired for the civil law division? A white person to deal with the issue of the dysfunctional office and racism in the office? And in the report was written with things that were absolutely offensive to racialized people, and we ended up having to write a letter, and we sent that letter to the ADAG and to the DAG, and it was still unsatisfactory. I know the government can move quickly when it wants to.
Yeah.
I've seen when a
Yeah.
white
For
woman
white
has
people.
complained
Yeah.
in an open letter
About
to
her
Patrick
energy bill.
Monahan, who was the DAG at the time. You would not believe how quickly the government responded, how quickly ALOC responded, who's my association, how quickly they got out that racialized ADAG, and how quickly they hired Leslie McLeod, a white woman, to interview people, and it wasn't an investigation. She interviewed over 200 people, and she also met with other people, and the results of that are being kept a secret, which is just reprehensible. Why should we have to keep secret our experiences of racism? When we leave the office, these people are all talking together. I had people organize, adults, lawyers, staff, to exhibit anti-black racism towards me and stuff like that. Do you know how painful that is? Do you know how that has affected my professional career? I should be out litigating now, and instead I'm not. And when I speak about myself, I'm just one of many, many women. So don't tell us you sent it to Steve Orsini. There should be a zero tolerance policy. And don't ask us to wait for years while you get it together. If you're not qualified for the job, sorry, but you need to step down. Everyone needs to step down who's not qualified
There
to
you go.
deal with anti-black racism, because we've been suffering since you brought us to this country, and we're tired of suffering and stuff like that.
Good goal.
I am tired. I have had to refinance my house to be able to afford counsel, and I've paid thousands and thousands of dollars, and we're just in the beginning of it, okay?
Shame,
This is
shame.
disgusting.
Stephen, you mentioned about the Secretary of Cabinet and it's acting immediately. What does that immediately mean? What are the timelines on that?
So we'll procure a competent lead for these two pieces of work.
Sorry, so that person hasn't been hired yet.
That's correct.
Okay, so that's the first point. And then what is the timeline once you do hire that person? Like, what is your timeline for hiring?
Our timeline for hiring is as quickly as we can do it.
No, but you need to have a
It's
deadline.
a matter of urgency.
When-
It is
what-
a matter of urgency.
So-
It's a crisis.
I completely with you on that.
So the point of what we're saying, Minister Coteau, in the interim of what Stephen suggested that the Secretary of Cabinet is doing, we're saying in the interim of that, you put a moratorium in place as requested by Saran on the demands list, and you get your person, as soon as you get your person together and they have their facts and they've done their interviews and their research and everything else, you can lift the moratorium. But in the interim of you putting that person in place, doing all the assessment you need to do and everything else, we're requesting a moratorium, and that immediate is as of today.
And Minister, you have respect
Being
for-
retroactive to the people who are already been suspended.
I think people, I think folks are a little confused about what my ability to do is. I cannot issue a moratorium on hiring and not hiring.
We're here to support you. We're here
So,
to support
so,
you.
when,
We need
so
your
let's,
help.
let's just talk about the history of how we got to this point. A few weeks ago, was it about a month ago, 3 weeks ago? We met for the first time. We sat down and actually had a conversation just before I was giving a speech for about 5 minutes. And I said, okay, there was 3-4 people, I think, that were part of the OPS. You told me your stories. I said, let's meet. And The first meeting was through the assistant deputy minister. You met with him. Now you're meeting with me. This is the first formal meeting that I've had with the OPS group specifically on these issues in relation to black women's experience in the OPS. The first formal meeting. I've been at this in the government now for 6 years. And for the last year and a half, we've worked on anti-racism and through the directorate on issues. And we've moved forward with, I think, a very aggressive agenda to try to transform the system, you know, by surveying, collecting data, setting those standards, putting an anti-racism plan. The Secretary of Cabinet has put in an anti-black racism, an anti-racism strategy for the OPS that is going to move forward. You know, I think there's transformative change that's taking place, and it doesn't go very quickly. And I know that there's personal issues, legal personal issues that are at play. It's very hard for me to be part of that particular process, you know, when it comes to the legal side of things. What I can help with is to look for ways to champion change from within the system. You know, to hold the system accountable. When there's someone who is mistreating someone in the OPS period, mistreatment, not treating people properly.
Yes.
It could be from racism, it could be any forms of, you know, isms.
Today we're talking about anti-black racism.
Please don't interrupt me.
No, I
Let
will
me finish my
interrupt.
thought.
Today we're talking about anti-black racism. So let's stay focused.
Well, what does that have to do with what I've just said? Anti-black racism, racism and other forms of anything that disrespects people. I can hold the system accountable by working with my colleagues. You know, rather than, I understand where people are coming from. I understand your stories, and I understand that, you know, there has been a wrongdoing that's taken place not only today, but probably a legacy for, you know, decades, right? You know, I know people who've told me they used to work for the OPS and that they were never given a fair chance. I've seen the same thing at the school boards. I've seen the same things in workplaces. You know, we have an opportunity today to look for ways to make transformative change. I can help, you know, internally figure out what the best process is by, you know, by speaking to my colleagues, by channeling your voice directly into the cabinet room.
So sorry, Minister, one quick question before people. So what about the whistleblower protection that's supposed to be in place? What actually shocking me right now? This is a system failure. This is a complete system failure.
Do you work?
No, I just want to know what the whistleblower protections are in place that the government has shared with folks who are employees at the OPS, saying, "Hey, listen, you witness anti-black racism. As a whistleblower, we will protect your identity. We will protect you from your managers. We protect you from directors."
I think what the challenge has always been is that when a person goes through a case of like, it's an individual, two individuals, and it becomes an HR issue, right? That's what I think it always falls into that catchment. But if we're talking about systemic racism, you know, that's a completely different approach to, and that's where probably the whistleblower piece. But most of the cases are HR, you know, HR issues, and that's where it's traditionally gone. But here we have a collective voice, which is very different from an individual voice, right?
Yeah, but
so,
there are a bunch of individuals here who've mentioned that they've experienced anti-black racism from their managers, and they've actually been penalized because of speaking up. Where's the whistleblower protection? That's failure.
Can I tell you something, bro?
Can you, wait, Minister Coutu, can you write a letter within the next 24 hours indicating that you are taking action on this particular matter and send that correspondence to Steve Orsini?
Well, probably not within the 24 hours, but I'll send a letter to him as soon as we can.
When?
I will do it as soon as I can.
Can we get a deadline?
We are mothers. We are mothers.
I'll do it as soon as I possibly.
People need timelines. People need timelines.
We are not getting paid. We are mothers.
No,
we are mothers.
But you have to understand. Like, I'll get the letter done. Just, you know, committing to what we've talked about. Steve Orsini will issue a memo to the OPS with some of the changes that he's presented. That will be a first step.
Wait, tomorrow?
We want it within the next
I can't speak on behalf of him, but
how hard is it to get on your computer and write a letter?
Listen, there is a date scheduled for an election, so we know that things can be set, yes?
Minister, don't you have your assistant in your room or somebody who's taking your minutes or something? Don't you have this guy there?
Because I feel like...
Do you want a letter saying I'm going to talk to Steve Orsini?
No.
Take the minutes, the context. Come on, Minister. We are government workers, we know how it works.
Okay, I have have to go pick up my daughter. I apologize. And you know, at the beginning of the meeting, I did say that I had to leave by 5. I do have to go pick up my daughter.
But
You know what? Where's important is your daughter. Just so you know that. So when you go to pick up your black daughter, just remember the black people
remember
in
our
this office,
faces.
and she may one day be sitting in a room like this, having been discriminated against because someone like you and Steve Orsini and you too, sir, have not done anything about
fair.
It is
That's not
absolutely
fair.
fair.
That's not fair.
You know what's not fair? Experiencing anti-black racism.
My friends, can I just say
That's
one
not
thing?
fair.
Everyone here is passionate about the same thing. I think there's goodwill around the table. We want to end anti-black racism. It's not going to be easy, but I think we want the government, we want our government to be on our side. So let's get a commitment.
We get 72 hours. The letter within 72 hours. George can do it.
That's it.
72 hours.
George writes well.
You know what? I will send an email to you tomorrow.
No, just
letting you
give the
know.
commitment, man. Just say
No,
72
listen,
hours.
listen to this right now.
No,
Listen.
72 hours.
I don't even know what I'm going to put in the letter.
Well, that's for you to think about.
Okay. Okay, so everyone just, okay, let me do it.
That's right. You elected by people. You voted for what's going to be done.
Talking goes through yesterday.
I can't commit to a letter.
Oh, really?
I will put together something talking about kind of capturing what we talked about. But I want people to know, you know, you said that, you know, what did you just say about I'm not working on, like, this is what I work on all the time. I've been doing this
I
for
don't know.
15
The
years.
Anti-Racism Directorate came into place in February 2016. Since then, women, including myself, have been suspended. And it's actually amazing. We had to bring a motion in my case to get myself reinstated. And then they want to actually put us back into the same, working with the same people who committed these acts. Can you believe that? And then they want you to get a letter from a psychiatrist or a psychologist saying why you can't work with someone who's engaged in anti-black racism towards you. It's ridiculous, right? These white people are still happy and living their lives.
Because Minister Tito has to leave, the last word is going to be, I'm just going to recap the demands. So the first demand
But Saran, before you do that, if Minister Coteau has to leave, I think Stephen has his notepad and he may be able to stay a little bit longer. Is that possible, Steve?
We scheduled till 5 o'clock.
But Steve looked like he was ready to stay.
Excuse me.
We scheduled 1 hour, and that's.
But this is your office. We have to like, this is your office. You have the power to be able to legislate. That's the first part. You also have the power to book rooms. So we will have Steve and Akwatu take the information that. But thank you for your presence. But we'll have Steve and Akwatu take the information.
I'm not clear on the 72-hour demand. I didn't get a yes or
So
no.
I can't. I'm not.
This is not, excuse me?
It's a yes or no. Just say yes or no.
This is not a negotiation.
That's right. It isn't a negotiation.
No. Sorry. You asked for a meeting for us to listen and hear.
No, we asked for action.
This is not a negotiation.
We asked for action.
No,
We have demands.
This is not a negotiation.
It isn't a negotiation. It's action plan. You're absolutely right. It's not a negotiation. It's an action plan. Steve, isn't Stephen? Is this gentleman's name Stephen? Sir, are you Stephen? Am I saying your name right?
Yeah, I'm
Oh, okay, because you're not looking at me, so I wasn't sure if I got your right name.
I was talking to him.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah.
So, Stephen, how many white people are on the Anti-Racism Directorate? You said you're one of them, and how many others?
How many are employed? By
Others are on the Anti-Racism Directorate. How many other white people?
I have no idea.
But you're one of them.
Ask him that.
So it would be in your best interest as a white person that we are suspect of is staying and hearing the rest of what's being said so that these issues can be said, because you're actually representing the interests of these black people as a white man. So it would be in your best interest to sit here and hear the rest of what's being said. Akwatu already knows his position as a black man and every other black person in here. But as the white person on the Anti-Racism Directorate, the expectation is for you to sit here and hear the rest of what needs to be said.
No, and I'm very pleased to
Great. Saran, continue, please.
Perfect. So then why don't we say
But I do have to
minutes?
get back to the office, so I'll need to leave around 5:30.
Okay, so
So can we commit to continuing this meeting until 5:30?
Absolutely.
Definitely listen, but 5:30, so we have agreed upon across the table?
Sir, just identify yourself on the record, please.
So I'm the director at the Anti-Racism Directorate, so I'm not one.
Name.
Caspar Hall, so I just give you a little bit. That's okay.
Thank you, Minister Cato.
Thank you, Minister.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So we are committed to another, I think, 20 minutes.
We know.
On the agenda. I just want to confirm in the room. Respect.
Okay, so for folks who are sort of mingling here, we do have an extension for another 20 minutes with the Assistant Deputy Minister, Akwatu Kenti. Yes?
Correct.
And your colleagues, which maybe you can just introduce yourselves, and then I still have the list of other women who haven't had an opportunity to say what they wanted to say. So if you want to just briefly just say your name and your role.
Sure, I'm
We haven't
Stephen
met.
Davidson,
Yeah.
so I'm the Deputy Minister of the Anti-Racism Directorate as well as Deputy Minister of Cabinet Office.
Yeah, my name is Caspar Hall. I'm the Director of Policy, Research, and Strategic Initiatives at the Anti-Racism Directorate.
Okay, so I do want to, there were other women who did not get their opportunity, so I want to make sure you all get the opportunity. So la prochaine femme que j'ai ici, c'est Sarah Alcindor. Sarah Alcindor.
I think she left.
Philip Johnson.
There's a lady with her hand up.
Sorry, I'm not one of those persons, but I'm just a bit sort of transfixed. I'm Sybil Douglas Rickens, by the way. I work at the Treasury Board Secretariat, but I'm currently on a secondment at MEDG MRIS. And I attended the Boxers Town Hall some months ago, a few months ago, and heard the stories of some of these women. And I could not believe what I was hearing, because honestly, that has not been my experience, but at the same time, very respectful of and empathize with the women in particular. I'm sure there are men who have had some of these experiences. And I find it traumatizing, to be honest with you. It's very traumatic for me, hearing these stories. Don't know whether I should consider myself lucky, blessed, whatever it is. I don't know, count the lucky stars. But the point is that at any time, I myself, others like me, I was just talking with my sister here, could have these experiences. But I think, Stephen, I want to put you on the spot. You know, I hope it won't make it too uncomfortable. But I would love to hear, from all that you've been hearing, what is your takeaway? Folks have been calling for a moratorium on these suspensions, you know, whatever it is of all women, which is really horrendous. What are your thoughts? Because as deputy, you're in a pivotal kind of position, you know, to make things happen. So I'd love to hear, what is your takeaway? What are you hearing? Because I'm hearing the pain. I'm getting emotional. I'm hearing the pain. It's horrible. This should not be happening. I came here to Canada and took the OPS from Jamaica about 9 years ago. I've been in the OPS 9 years ago. Won't go into the details of career path, expectations, delusions, and all that kind of thing. That's a different conversation. But I'm just, I don't know. I can't find the words, but it's bothersome. It's bothersome to say the least. So what are you taking from this? What are your thoughts and perspective on this call for a moratorium? And where do you see us going? Well, what is your role? What are you prepared to do?
So, gentlemen, before you respond, I just want to make sure you heard the question, so retain it in your mind. And I'd like Joy Barnwell to ask her a question if she's here. And if not, then we'll go to Philip Johnson.
Is Joy still here?
Okay, so Philip.
Hi. I was asked to come here. My story's a little bit different. I find that I know a few of you ladies. I saw you guys, ladies, in the past. It's very painful when you see people go through pain the same way you went through pain, right? I feel, this is what I feel. I feel that there's not enough transparency when it comes to certain things. Management has a way of covering up, and we're not allowed to talk, and we say no talk, and nothing. A lot of us could go through, and I see it right now because I've had to go see, you know, professional help, PTSD. I see it. When a person is demean and taken away their dignity, these things happen. So I feel for a lot of the ladies that's inside of here. With my story is that I work for the city of Toronto, and 3 caretakers paraded up and down with KKK head and be going white power. It's painful, right? Supervisor there witnessed it. Nothing was done. A black supervisor took over from the white one, and he was immediately dismissed because heaven knows we don't want anybody to know that City of Toronto allows this type of behavior. Was the caretakers disciplined? No. Well, they were removed from the area, but they continued, nothing was done, right? Before they were removed, they wanted to send a message to myself, who reported it. I have a little something that they did, right? When I went to do some cleaning, they put some bleach in a bottle, almost went in my eyes.
Oh my
See?
God.
And did you know what my supervisor did? Nothing. I did everything that I was supposed to do. I put down an incident report. He didn't even have the courtesy to sign it. He goes, well, the system is broken. It is causing a lot of pain on people. If people start taking actions into their own hands, it's going to be a very dangerous. And that is, people's on the verge of that. I'm being brutally honest. You see a lot of these ladies, you got to look right inside their eyes. Because if you push a person enough and they snap, there's no going back. But nothing was done. What happened to it? They were compensated for acting bad. Right? And I have PTSD. I was, they were making jokes. They used to call me, what's up, my nigger? They used to make jokes of the, they did a lot of things to harass me. And I reported to the supervisor, nothing was done. There was a story, they told me one joke one time. How long, some people heard it. How long does it take a black woman to go to the washroom? I go, how long? 9 months, because what comes out of her is a piece of shit. How could a person like myself, and supervisor knew, nothing was done. Hey, the most funny.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop you because we have women who want to speak too.
One more. The next one was the what is the best comedy show in the 70s? The most funniest comedy show. You know what they said? Roots, because that's how black people was put in their place.
Okay, so
Go ahead.
So retain the information. I see you taking notes because you're gonna respond to all of those. So I have Megan Whitfield, if she's still here, and then I have Sarah Alcindor. Okay.
Hello. So I work with the Ministry of Advanced Education and Skills Development. I'm in the Employment and Training Division. I've been an employee with in public service for almost 28 years. So I think I probably have the most seniority in maybe my ministry, but I don't want to say my ministry, maybe my branch. I feel like I've experienced it all. I'm kind of tired of hearing stories because we talk about this stuff. I think I talk about this stuff every single day. So I don't even know. I think we're beyond stories now. Because I hear stories all the time. My mother worked for the government. I listened to her stories when she worked for the government. She sacrificed her career for the sake of me and the rest of the black folks that followed her into government jobs so that we could get jobs, that we could just actually go and get jobs, get hired. But now what I'm seeing is that for those of us who have the audacity to have some sort of ambition, it's fine if you stay at the bottom levels, but anytime you start having any kind of ambition, you become a problem. Because there's no space for any senior policy folks or anybody in any kind of management or leadership positions that are black in my ministry, period. We had team leads, we had black team leads in my particular branch, 3 in a branch that changed over every single manager in the entire branch. And team leads are usually the most logical people to take the place of a manager because we're always called on to act for those managers. None of us could actually secure a management position. And in fact, what I'll say is that once we started applying and showing that we had ambition for leadership type roles, we're already team leads, that we were pushed out. Either pushed out or demoted out of those positions. And so now there's no black team leads in my branch. And there are no black managers in my branch. And I'd like to argue that probably there might be 1 or 2 black managers. And I'm not even talking senior level managers, just managers, period. In terms of policy, I can't think of any. And these are people who are making policies for people like me. And so I've sat around policy tables. I've heard people ask strange questions about situations that they should know about because they're making policies for youth who have issues and who have problems finding employment. They're making policies for youth, many of those youth being black youth, and they know nothing about black people or the issues of black people. And they state this in the policy rooms, like in the policy table, around the policy table, and it's just incredible. Yet black folks who are educated and who have the experience still can't find permanent positions, even acting positions, in the policy in the policy division with my ministry. So it's just, you know, I have lots of stories. I don't want to tell any of them because they sound like everybody else's stories. What I want to say is that I've had enough. These people should not be employed.
Exactly.
These people that are putting us through this do not deserve jobs with the Ontario Public Service.
100%.
Okay? None of them are fired. None of them are ever demoted. We are fired. I've just recently been demoted because I called out anti-black racism in my branch. I sent a letter to Steve Orsini, and after no, he responded. He did respond, but the thing is that after I sent the letter and I became vocal about what the ongoings in the branch, I got demoted. So that was my present. But what and not because I couldn't do my job. I have 27 years experience. I can do my job all right. I've received awards for doing my job. So I can do my job. I got demoted shortly after I sent a letter to Steve Orsini to let him know that anti-black racism was a problem in my branch. Right?
He knows that, right? He's kind of
so, and the people who are behaving in these ways are not getting demoted. Okay? They're not getting demoted, they're not getting fired, they continue. Their careers thrive. Okay, and that's
SMG
right?
ones.
And that what I'm gonna say is that there's a lot of black people in the same position as I am, where they have ambition and they want to be promoted, and we're not promoted at the same levels as our white counterparts. Okay, we're losing money. We're losing our financial ability to take care of ourselves and our families. We have families, we have mortgages, we have people that we need to take care of. We want to take care of ourselves. We want nice houses and vacations too, like everybody else, and we're not being permitted to do so. Why? Because we are black people. That's not right. It needs to stop.
We just want to say before, I have Megan Wheelfield representing CUPW, Canadian Union of Postal Workers, Ontario Federation of Labor, Coalition of Black Trade Unionists. But before I go to Megan, there's been discussion about escalating this because I heard some people saying take matters into your own hands, and I encourage that. There's nothing more powerful and effective than just ordinary people organizing. So there is discussions about escalating it to Premier Catherine Rain. She meets with steelworkers. She meets with like Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts, so she can definitely meet with
The
black
levy is
workers.
on Saturday. She has a levy in my riding on Saturday, so we can go to her.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I plan to.
Fantastic.
I plan to because she's my MPP.
Sorry, who's the next speaker?
I just want to see.
So
I just want to make one quick note here.
any person that's working over 20 years who have a vision and they're still under management, the probability is unlikely that that's a fluke.
Thank you.
If you have 27 years of experience, you should be a director or ADM.
Yeah.
Thank you. So all the people that I started with are.
Of course.
Yes,
Yeah.
of course. They all are.
Thank you.
So my story is a little different because I do not work with Ontario Public Service. I'm actually a postal worker. I was brought here in regards to Labor Sense. I do sit on the executive coalition of Black trade unions. So when Minister Couture talks about what labor does, is that we do fight. And we do fight because anti-Black racism is not just within the Ontario Public Service, it's within the workplace as well. If those of you remember a couple months ago on G98, they had a story in regards to anti-Black racism and also anti-Black racism within even your organizations, within the union. And I could tell you the stories I hear is what I have lived and is what I have felt. But what I could say, because I'm not going to continue to say exactly, because when I start talking to my story, and especially as a Black woman, when we decide to either get promoted or run for positions, or you decide to be up in a different position, the additional racism that you feel, how it affects you, like all these women have said, it's not even just about your work life. It's about your family life.
It just
and
kills you.
I just have to say before I go any further, Minister Couture, as I said to the sister when she called me, is I knew exactly what's going to happen. It's always a 1 hour stop. It's disrespectful. It's a disrespect. When the anti-Black racism directive was going on, myself, the Coalition of Black Trade Unions, we were OFL, we were at every single one of them. And we kept hearing the same stories over and over and over again, right? But it's, what do you do in the workplace? And just like these sisters, the Ontario government has the right, all we're asking for, and it's the same thing in a lot of workplaces, is when you are suspended or what have you, that there has to be a system in place that you don't also financially cripple the victims and continue to victimize them. So when Minister Couture is saying, well, what's the unions doing? Yeah, we have to clean up our own house, but we now have to stand together because you know what? I was just re-elected again for 2 more years as the Ontario Federation of Labor Executive Vice President representing worker of color. And I know my counterpart, Elizabeth Hall, who is an Ontario Public Service worker with OPSU, is there. Unfortunately, she couldn't be here. I came in her place. We were going to stand with you. And I know as well the Coalition of Black Trade Unions is going to be here. We are going to have a voice on what's going to happen here. It is so nice that everybody's here, that we have to continue this because you know what? People are watching, and it's not okay to have one meeting and be cut off, and maybe he feels that he doesn't have
private meeting
hours
and a
go
private
to
meeting too.
We are taxpayers too.
Exactly, and
That's
our
right.
votes and our voice matters, and this is where we're going to continue to
Woo!
take it. So I'm going to
Because it's being live streamed at home, so for folks watching at home, I'm going to restate the demands. We're going to get to hear from the gentleman with one more woman on the speakers list. So the demands again were a moratorium on the suspension and firing of Black workers, a Truth and Reconciliation Initiative to look at the experiences of Black workers within the Ontario Public Service, and an independent and impartial investigation to audit anti-Black racism within the Ontario Public Service. Kathleen Wynne is having a New Year's levy on Saturday. We should demand a meeting with her as well. That's already been in discussion. It's actually, I want it noted for the record, I find it a little bit insulting that you have the best and brightest African Canadian leaders in the province, and that we wouldn't have been welcomed with open arms to this meeting. It was a fight to even get to this meeting, and I don't think that's how you treat leaders and presidents of labor unions, organizations, members of civil society organizations either. I don't know if other communities would be treated that way. I'm not going to speculate, but you know, I again encourage folks to mobilize around Premier Wynne and continue the organizing past today. So I'm going to have the last couple of women, and then we'll hear from the gentlemen. So I have Jacqueline. Jacqueline?
Well, you know what? I mean, I'm conscious of the time that you committed for 5:30, and it's now 5:30.
Thank you, respect. Thank you very much.
But I just want to say that I left the OPS in 2005. I was one of the first interns that came in to government in 1988. I had 2 master's degrees when I came in, and I was a single parent, just fresh in Toronto. And after working in almost every single ministry, the highest I could ever achieve was a senior policy advisor. After being seconded to about 10 ministries. And I have lived through the NDP years the golden years for resistance, where black people were in the highest held senior position, and I've seen them fall, and I've seen these waves, and it's just heartbreaking to see that we're right back where we were. It's the same thing. And so my question to you, how do we move forward to make something sustainable? To see, it's sad to me that I've never seen a black person in senior leadership position who've actually retired with a pin. They just don't last. They're here today, gone tomorrow, especially those who are aligned to the community. I left the government, I went to the city for 10 years because I just couldn't break through. Same thing. And then after that, I went into the church. I became a priest. I gave up on everything. And I went to the church, went to God, and oh my God, it's even worse. And I thought, you know, from a perspective of the government, it is anti-black. There is something that creates this hostility. I like this new word. There's all these new words that are floating around. Microaggression. And that's exactly it. Against black people. That wherever you go, it's there. It's present to meet you, to hug you. And if you fight against it, you will be punished. You will be in the church. What they do for priests, that they just don't appoint you. They just kind of, you don't get on committees. You get, your place here, your place there. Because what? You know yourself, and you love people, and you love yourself. And so from you guys are now the new slate. We've been here before. Once upon a time we had it was big, we had a cabinet committee on black, and back in the day. What's new? How are we gonna crack this thing, this disease? It's solvable. It can be done. So I know it must be so exhausting, and it's such a heartbreak to see the next generation of people
through the same
here
thing.
again. And so you guys, we've been there, done that.
Do something different.
Do something. So last speaker, before we hear from from the panel, or I've been calling you gentlemen all night, but from you all, Arlene, and then I'll recap just some next steps, and then we'll just go.
5:30. It's 5:30.
Okay, so
if there's one more person on the list.
I would appreciate that, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just sitting here, and just like my sister over here said, I'm listening to these stories, and I myself am traumatized. And I agree with you. I have not entered into that arena to that level, and I ask myself, is it because I am blessed? Because I could not imagine what their lives are like. When and where does this stop? What needs to happen? Is this a silent genocide? What is this? When does this take place? The change that needs to happen for the survival of us and the next generation. What needs to happen? What needs to be done? We were Ken and myself, G98.7, we were the ones that did the talk show on anti-black racism in the workplace. And the lines lit up. There was not enough time or space on that board. So it's not just in this room. What needs to happen is my question.
The floor is yours, and you have a lot of people watching at home as well, so
Okay,
make it
well,
good.
let me just say a few words, if I could, and Sybil, I think it was. So I appreciate your question about what I'm taking away from this. Jacqueline, I really appreciate your optimism and the positive energy you're bringing. When you say this must be exhausting for us, it's not exhausting for us, it's exhausting for you and all of you. And I'm just so struck by, what I've heard. So let me just say that I think, it is, so I'm going to try to be optimistic in return. And I'll talk more specifically about what the minister was getting at when he said on the WDHP piece and taking those decisions out of ministries and out of the hands of managers and bringing them to the top of the organization, to the Secretary of the Cabinet and the Public Service Commission. So I've heard a lot of distressing things about bad managers and bad behavior by people who are in, you know, positions of authority and power over other people, right? And that's not the kind of workplace that any of us want to be in, and it's not the kind of OPS that we want to have. So I'm just going to use that one example to try to paint a more full picture of what I think this means. So in a situation where there right now is that power vested in a manager, that manager's not going to have that power anymore. So that decision, not only that decision on what action to take in the workplace with respect to that situation, but all the factors around it are going to be revealed, and there's going to be a light shone on it. And if that's going to proceed, it's going to come to a central table with the cabinet secretary and deputies who are very motivated to fix this stuff. And so that situation is going to be scrutinized in all its complexity. So the individual complaint and complainant, the relationship with that is complained upon, the whole thing. I mean, I would venture to say that the discussion, when that comes to the table, is going to be every bit as much about the manager and the behavior of the individual in position of authority as it's going to be about, well, what is, you know, the situation. So I think that is a really, really, really important step. It's beginning immediately. Steve has already communicated it.
But the question is, will you continue to defend bad managers?
Well, this is my point. And I'm not going to defend a bad manager. And what I'm saying is, right now, that happens in, you know, it's somebody's talked about, you know, the system and, you know, like we've all, I mean, one thing public servants are really good at, we're good at navigating a lot of complexity, right? We work in massive organizations, and massive organizations can hide and obscure stuff, right? That's not going to be able to happen. It's going to come out into the light, and no decision would be taken around impacting on anyone's pay or benefits without that full discussion happening. So,
but even if we're still getting paid, Steve, and we're out of the workplace, that doesn't help. Why should I be out of the workplace? That sets a narrative that the issue is with me and not the issue with my colleagues who organize and are. Steve Cini is aware of my case. Kathleen Wynne is aware of my case. Michael Coteau is aware of my case because they've received all of the materials. They received the grievance. They received the WDHP. They received my response. I mean, I have unnamed complainants, and I was suspended based on unclarified information. The WDHP is supposed to take 90 days to complete a report, and it's almost 2 years later, and my story is not different than anyone else's story. You know why? Because the government's invested in protecting and defending white supremacy. And unless we use those words, and unless we're willing to root that out, nothing's going to change. And so unless you see us as human beings that have human feelings and that need to be protected, unless you realize the dignity that all black people have as human beings, nothing's going to change. So you can, because the government's great at talk, lots of talk, lots of policies and stuff, and policies that have been put in place to actually protect us as marginalized people, as people who have a history of being disadvantaged, are actually used to protect white supremacy. So that's the problem. So let's not pretend Steve Cini is not aware of what's going on, that you're not aware of what's going on. You're very much aware, and it's easy for you to sit here in quiet tones and talk about, because you don't have an emotional connection to what is happening to me, what is happening to my people. Let me tell you, and you can take this back to Kathleen Wynne, we are not finished. She depends on black and brown votes
Yeah.
She wants them for the election, but she doesn't want to do anything for us. She thinks that she can just depend and rely on us because we have a history as racialized people of voting liberal. That's not going to happen anymore. And if one party gets in and it doesn't serve our needs, we're going to go to the next party. And we expect to hold all of you accountable. So don't come into meetings where you can be, it's very nice that you can feel very disengaged or you can smile at what the pastor has said and stuff. Let me tell you, not one moment during this time have I really felt like smiling, except for a private exchange between Akwatu and myself. But other than that, it's a miserable experience to have to be here. We shouldn't have to be here. And quite frankly, I resent that you as a white man are in this space and you can't understand what I'm going through and you don't care and you use all the resources of the government to protect white supremacy. And when we're being suspended and we use words like white privilege and stuff, when we actually speak out for ourselves or for other people, that's problematic. I want to see next time, because we met with Akwatu December the 20th. It is now, what, almost a month later, and nothing has come out of it. Don't tell me Steve or Cindy didn't know. The only thing I received is a letter recently from Michael Coteau, and that's because he knew I was going to be here today. That's unacceptable. Michael Coteau also, even though he's a black man, has a very nonchalant sort of attitude regarding this. We know that this is mostly affecting black women because black men are rarely hired in the OPS anyways and stuff. What you do is you put them through the criminal justice system. That's what you do.
For everyone, like, I'd like to be quiet for a moment because I have a very important announcement for everyone watching at home. We talked about escalating January 20th, 2018 at 1 o'clock at the Toronto Botanical Garden, which is at 777 Lawrence Avenue East. You can Google it. Kathleen Wynne will be there. I encourage each and every single one of you. There's so much anger in the room. Hold the Premier accountable. We elect her. She's to serve the people. So everyone on January 20th, 2018 at 1 o'clock, that's the meeting with the Premier. If she won't meet with us on our own terms, because you know how hard it is. Wait for her outside. You know how hard it is to get a meeting with them. She meets with steelworkers, she meets with unions, she meets with farmers, she meets with everybody, and she'll meet with you if we go there. So January 20th, 2018 at 1 o'clock, tell your concerns to Kathleen Wynne. And I want Akwatu to speak.
Yeah, I just wanted to close actually because we've run out of time. But I specifically responding to what is the takeaway and what's new.
Yeah.
That's what is the takeaway and what's new. So for me, the takeaway is it's not just about anti-black racism. It's about gendered anti-black racism, which is a reality. It's a reality, and we have an anti-black racism strategy. We have an almost complete OPS anti-racism strategy. But what has to happen, I think, in terms of what I'm learning and I've heard, is that gender anti-black racism strategy, the anti-black racism that's gender focused or specifically intersectional with respect to women, targeting women, has to be a core piece of the strategy and has to be a core piece of the OPS anti-racism program or plan that we do. And that's very obvious to me. And I actually am like the person who said, that they can't handle hearing this stuff repeatedly because it wears you down.
Traumatizes you.
And yeah, so I share that sentiment very much. So in terms of, that's my big takeaway, and actually, so we have an anti-black racism strategy that's outward focused, and we've been developing an OPS anti-racism policy that's inward focused, and I think what needs to be strengthened within it as a result of what I heard is the gendered piece, because I think that
also whistleblower protection.
No, so that's another point. That's another point. Actually, yeah, the external review, one of the key items under the review is reprisals. That external review, the external review has to look at the whole reprisals and how that takes place and what the vulnerabilities around that and how that could be closed, because it shouldn't be the case that if you make a complaint, next thing you know you're
or if you file a grievance.
So that is already built into the external review. What's new? What's new is we have legislation that supports the Anti-Racism Directorate, and that legislation requires community consultations for every 5-year plan. So the first plan is actually a 3-year plan, and it's focused on child welfare, education, and justice, because those were the 3 areas that were identified as priority areas, and we're aiming to reduce disparities, achieve graduation rates for black kids that are equivalent to the provincial standards, achieve child welfare rates for black kids that from where it is now 41% down to parity for white kids, or the dominant population. And similarly with the criminal justice system, reduce the black representation at all levels of that. And that's what we're aiming for. But even that has to be much more intersectional in nature and really be cognizant of gender. Gender has to play a significant role in our anti-black racism strategy. That's number one.
Is the workplace missing from that focus?
Exactly.
No, yeah, the OPS,
Yes, I'm waiting for it.
The OPS anti-racism policy is workplace directed, and it's actually focused on microaggressors. There's a piece about leadership diversification, and one of the things that we're hoping to do.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what I wanted to hear.
Yeah, so let me tell you what we're hoping to do with data is actually track cohorts when people enter the system and to see who's progressing through the system across the life cycle of their employment.
Is that retroactive?
Yeah, that's what I spoke about.
So it can be retroactive because it's based upon the race-based data that we begin to gather, right? So that's number two.
But I mean, isn't that something like? Oh, sorry, I don't want to. I know.
I just running out of time. That's all.
Yeah, I know. I just have a question about that too. Is that like if you're looking at me as a black person who started, and I'm going to tell you that, like. Even how they did the pay equity with the federal government is like you start at the same time as a white person, right? With the same similar level of education, and how far they have gotten in the same number of years, and how long it took them to become like manager and whatever, and their income versus your income for the same number of years, and you can see the discrepancy, right? The problem there, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And, right. So
Aren't you guys tired of taking that on black people?
You might want to look at.
No, there's no race-based data. We don't have race-based data standardized across this province. That would be new. And that's very important for when you make a case that says, there's a pattern here, there's a trend here. I know it's not just me. Two people, somebody said 3 people and 2 are gone. Well, how do you substantiate that with data that's...
But surely, Akwati, you're not saying that we need to prove that racism exists by making those statements.
No. No, that's not what I'm saying. You ask me what's new, and the race-based data gathering will be new. The anti-black racism strategy is new, and we don't have time for me to get into the 5 different components of that strategy with respect to how it's going to move forward and the 7-year plan that we have, but, free to do that.
Akwati, we just want to know what's going to happen to us now. What you're going to do for us. We don't want the strategy and all this BS.
Because you said that in December 20th,
we don't want that.
passed
We want
the
to know
memo
what's
on.
going to happen to us now. We have no money. We're losing our houses.
Let's hear him. Let's hear him, sister.
Let's
Go
say
ahead,
what's going to
Akwati.
happen.
Right, so we're doing an external review of the WHP, and we're also getting an external, not external review, but case review of long-standing cases, which like something that goes back 2 to 3 years.
Excuse me, not to be disrespectful, who's actually doing that review?
It's going to be
Because you
external.
should be seeking input
External
from
review.
your black people,
with
the
anti-racist
black
competence.
employees. You just don't go and pick someone like you picked for Leslie
Yeah.
McCall. That's problematic and stuff like that.
So even the terms of reference are being vetted with our affinity groups.
Well,
to make sure it's not just the
we want to be
black
consulted.
lobsters.
We want to be at the table.
We want to be at the
wants to be
table.
at the
We want to be at the table. Don't go pick someone without hearing from us
Labor
and
wants
stuff
to be
like
at the
that.
table.
Because even if you pick a racialized person, you pick a racialized person that actually
So,
has given in a Stephen, Stephen from Django.
No.
We don't want any of those. We
No.
need to watch that.
I
movie.
refuse to watch that.
No cherry picking.
Yeah,
I think the main thing is
we want someone who actually, what I'm telling you, go tell them about Stephen later
I
on.
have a question. You focus on WHP, but are you also going to look at the grievances that was filed through the unions as well? Because I didn't go through the WHP route, and I think that people who file grievances may fall through the cracks. So I think you should cover that as well.
That's a very good point.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what about payment, Akwati? Helping with you've been put in a situation where you've been violated by bad managers, and then you have to mortgage your home to finance that, to fight back. What sort of mechanism do you have in place, or can you put in place to support workers to fight back? We shouldn't be fighting.
Because you're supporting paying for the
So
white
what I'm hearing
people to be
is the
protected.
future plan, but what about the existing situations? How
Right.
can you help? How can you help?
Yeah, well,
The government has the money. It has very deep pockets and will
Yeah,
spend
yeah, yeah.
millions supporting white supremacy and our white offenders, the people who perpetuate all sorts of anti-black racism against us. take some of those funds and start paying it out to us so that we can have that protection. So we're not mortgaging our homes and stuff, going out and working as maids and other people's
Jean Marie, just before Stephen leaves, because first of all, I want to acknowledge that you do have a lovely smile. and Stephen, perhaps you can tell this room of predominantly black people why you felt qualified to be on the Anti-Racism Directorate.
Good question. Well, that's a very fair question. I think it's a difficult question because so I'm just going to speak me as a person here.
You can only do that. You can only do that, right?
Yeah,
you as a person.
But I'm a OPS lifer too. I started in '91, with the NDP, and I've worked, through all of them. And I've grown up in an organization which has, for quite a while, talked about diversity and inclusion, but we haven't talked as explicitly about anti-racism, and we haven't talked about white supremacy and white privilege and all of these other terms that are a little bit more jagged, right? And we are now, and so me, white man in the OPS, what rights or do I have to be in this position? Well, it's a couple of factors. One, I think I am a person of integrity, and I think I have empathy, and I have a keen desire to learn. And I haven't gone to one of these meetings or one of the town halls where I haven't been, like a little bit overcome by what I've heard. So, that's just my personal experience. But I think that's a positive thing in terms of I try to be as open as I can. But there's also a practical thing. So I'm the Deputy Minister responsible for policy in Cabinet Office, and I'm the Associate Cabinet Secretary, so big fancy title. But my job is to drive system performance across all ministries. So it was very important to the government when they set up the Anti-Racism Directorate that it be in Cabinet Office. They wanted it to be, because it was always going to be small, and it was never going to have a budget that would accomplish all our goals. It was always going to need to work through other ministries. And that's what I do every day. I come in and I work with other ministries as they collaborate or don't collaborate as much as they should on developing, their policies and proposals. And they come in and I try to, navigate that system and ensure that stuff is aligned to achieve the government's directives and goals. And that's what we want the ARD to do. It's this little engine that is always going to need to work through others. So I think I bring those skills. Those are generic. They're not identity.
Are you burdened by your privilege? Are you burdened by it?
Well, that's not a question that I'm.
Are you aware of it? Are you aware?
Yeah, I'm aware of it. Yeah, I'm aware of it.
Steve,
but I think it's great that you're working with the anti-racism. To be honest, I think it's not our racism; it's white people's racism.
It is.
Right, but I don't understand what racism is. Even. Well, let me just say this: I would hope that if you hire an expert to deal with these issues, that's not the sort of answer that we're going to get, because we need someone who has a stronger idea of what racism is and white privilege. And I get the sense that you wouldn't even be able to define racism, and that is very disconcerting, because one has to have that sort of knowledge. So it's not like a put down of you, but just like anything else, there's specialties and stuff like that and areas of expertise. And as a lawyer, I just can't pick up myself and go into an area that I don't have an expertise and a competence in, because I'm going to be in trouble. So to me, that's not a great answer. I appreciate you trying to, but if we were interviewing, and this is one of the things when we're talking about training and hiring managers that have the skills and the competence and the cultural competence, we don't want that sort of answer, and that's why it's very important to get input from Black people and other racialized groups, because that sort of answer should not qualify someone to work in the Anti-Racism Directorate or anything to deal, in my opinion. And I can tell you there's a lot of other lawyers who feel the same way, and we've brought those issues not only to our association, we've brought them to different deputies and even to Yasser Naqvi. So I'm just letting you know that, and it sounds like you might have been the only person in there, in the cabinet office who could take on that job.
Okay,
So-
hold on, wait, no, I'm sorry, because I don't want to have people like attrition. So before, I don't want to hear rustling just yet, just give me a couple of minutes, because I'm about to adjourn the meeting formally.
Can I
And
just
for
make
people,
one suggestion before you adjourn?
it's gonna be really quick.
Yeah, really quick. I just want to say, and especially to Aqua, to the gentleman here, we hear about accountability. I'm talking about moving forward and trying to address this centuries-long issue of anti-black racism. I've heard about accountability, and CAPSEC also talked about that at our town hall. I think there are two other key words that we need to introduce into the conversation. One is equity and one is consequences. So we hear these ladies talking about holding managers and whoever else accountable. But what are the consequences? Does it mean that these ladies don't have a job, but these people are still in their job and everything is still okay? So those two words, you know, consequences and fairness, you know, those are two important words, I believe.
It's a very simple acronym. It's ACE: accountability, consequences, and equity. Very easy to remember. The government loves acronyms. ACE. It's very simple. So she's going to finish. She's going to finish. But sir, you said you're a policy director. It's already made out for you. Saran has already prepared this paperwork that you have in front of you today. Everyone was given the handout. We're actually going to make it public on all social media accounts, and that you have the directive right here to give to, as I understood what Minister Coteau said, to send it to Steve Orsini. So it's very simple. When you're saying, oh, I need to put it together, it's put together for you. We're trying to make your job easy. We're really wanting to support you in this to get it done. So it's all typed up. We can send you it in a digital file to make it even easier for you. You're going to send this information to Steve Orsini, and we are expecting within 72 hours that it's completed, that Steve Orsini does what he needs to do according to these directives so that our people can feel safe and they have the ability to thrive within society in general, because it's in the workplace affects your life.
Yeah. So out of respect for the women, I want to have the opportunity to do final observations, so please no wrestling or kind of shifting in your, you know, I know we're going to experience attrition, and then formally adjourn. So for folks who've been, you know, we are live streaming, so some folks probably just came on and didn't see. I'm going to recap the demands and then also say when the next big function will be so that nobody can miss. Just one observation that wasn't also, I don't think, emphasized enough tonight. This costs a fortune. Legal fees, lawsuits. There are a ton of lawsuits against against the government, against these employers, and it's costing a fortune. The government has deep pockets and can handle that kind of litigation, but something else to take away is you got to tell the government or the employer, you can't, rather than spending tens of thousands of dollars defending racism and defending anti-black racism, that should go to actually setting up some of the demands we said and putting it towards solutions. The other piece, we have Megan Whitfield here from Labor. Give labor hell. Labor unions are not representing you. You all know it. Everyone has said it. I'm seeing a lot of nodding heads. And the union has a legal obligation to protect you from anti-black racism. So with Megan here, who's representing CUPW, Coalition of Black Trade Unions, Ontario Federation of Labor, make them finance it. Make them, you know, actually defend you properly against the employer. Lastly, the other piece, I just want to really thank a number of people, but before I do that, mark on your calendars, January 20th, this is going to go to the Premier. Be there, that is your next meeting. She has an obligation to meet the electorate at 1 p.m. at the Toronto Botanical Garden. Hold the Premier accountable. She, like I said, this is not new. She should be honored to meet you. Absolutely honored to meet the leaders and the people that are in this room. It's actually her privilege to actually be able to hear from you. So you should feel entitled as an electorate and hold Premier Wynne accountable. I'm gonna do some really quick thank yous. I really just wanna thank a number of people. So first of all, I'd really like to thank Kent Rose Nelson, who is the plaintiff in a lawsuit against the government, taking Her Majesty the Queen as represented by the Minister of Citizen and Immigration all the way to a full and public hearing before the Human Rights Tribunal of Ontario in July. So please, round of applause for Kent Rose Nelson. I'd like to thank Walid Kogali. Thank you so much for everything you've done. So please, a round of applause for Walid Kogali. Merci beaucoup. And I'd like to thank Sarah Jama, who came all the way in from Hamilton. Please, thank you, Sarah. For
I didn't do anything.
Your presence,
Just your
sister.
presence. Your presence.
Yes, as a footnote, this meeting was not accessible. The government, from my view, is in breach of the Ontario Human Rights Code, confirming accessibility just less than 12 hours before the meeting. Just to fact check myself, I'll actually be more generous. 24 hours before a meeting to not confirm accessibility is a breach of the Ontario Human Rights Code, and it was a fight to have this meeting. We were only, all of you all were supposed to be barred. There was only supposed to be 5 people in here. This can accommodate many people. It was a fight to get each and every one of you into this room, and it was thanks also in large part to Jean-Marie Dixon. So if we can get and thank you for the gentleman for listening and taking.
Arlene Davis.
Oh, I'd like to
Arlene
thank
Davis.
Arlene Davis, who is also a plaintiff suing this government and also headed towards a full and final public hearing at the Human Rights Tribunal of Ontario. A big thank you to Desmond Cole. All of you know he's like a household name for circulating this. It's been circulated hundreds of times. So I feel a lot of momentum. It's not over. It's just beginning, and it's starting January 20th at Premier Wynn's function in Toronto Botanical Garden. Alors, merci beaucoup pour votre participation. Je vais faire mes commentaires très rapidement parce que j'ai fait tout le commentaire en anglais. Je m'excuse pour les francophones qui sont à Québec ou à votre maison. Et merci beaucoup pour votre participation. Thank you.
Okay, before everyone leaves, Dave has an announcement.